You are responsible for my content, and I will ask questions and eventually put some comments about the results. So please take your phones. Are you ready? One disclaimer, I use this app for the first time ever, so maybe there will be some issues and I don't know how to solve them.
Okay, seems I'm there.
Okay, and let's start with something simple. We will create, I don't know, we will create word cloud map about how do you think that senior front-end developer should like. So focus on technical aspects of what does it mean to be senior front-end developer, and put as many phrases or words you can in this question. Do you see? Yeah.
We could play some elevator music, right?
I am but about put in some jokes or something like this, so I rather be silent. But I promise the rest of the talk will be faster.
So it's a serious subject, we can't do jokes anyway, right?
Okay. Can I reveal the results? I think yes. I don't know how. Sorry.
There is like press something on the right side.
Press H and it doesn't work. Yeah, I know why. Sorry for interruption. I have to disable remote. Sorry. Okay, I will remove it and remove stuff. Okay. And let's go through the results. What I'm looking for is technical aspects of software architecture, and we don't see them, or is there somewhere those answers? Testing, accessibility, algorithms, maybe. Decision making, industry trends. Please help me. I don't see any topic related to software architecture.
There was architecture design.
Yeah. Okay.
At least once.
Wow. And I think that is our biggest problem of front-end development. We are talking about junior, medior, senior. From my perspective, that doesn't make sense. We should talk about the skills. Junior is capable to writing code. Medior is some programming skills. And senior knows what does software development means and how to write big application which scales and are performant and are easy to maintain and develop further. And welcome to my talk. Senior frontend developer doesn't exist. And from the first slide, you know what is my point. And I will continue in the next questions. I will ask you for some aspects of software development, which I hope will support my thesis that we don't have them. We don't have senior front-end developers, and I will explain why. And about me, I am from product board. I am working in the developer experience team, and we are hiring to our team, especially for Balázs, my colleague. He needs somebody for him. Let's continue. My presentation basically will be the state of front-end development in our group. First questions. How often you are facing the problems with delivering even simple feature? So you should see, yeah, you need your phones to answer them. Often, never, I. Yeah, I would like to speak with somebody who told us that never.
Maybe they don't deliver this shit.
Just don't deliver at all.
From my experience, it's not a rare situation, and I'm glad that you don't have those problems, but in my past 3 or 4 projects, it was a common issue that the complexity of the application was so huge that delivering even simple feature was a problem. And that was why I asked for this question. So another, which is following this one, is how many times in the past 5 years you faced the situation that company decide to rewrite the application or part of the application?
So sorry, so like you are deciding if you want to, or you decided that you are doing the rewrite?
You will, it doesn't matter. You will you face the situation that somebody, that company was deciding to rewrite the application, or it was you who start this initiative. It doesn't matter. And this is the interesting one. It means that in the past 5 years, we all work in an environment that we decide to skip millions of dollars because we wrote a crappy application and we wasn't able to continue. Is there somebody who don't agree with this statement?
Could you just repeat the statement that you made?
My statement is, during the past 5 years, majority of us was in the situation that the company decide throw out all the money they put to the original development of an application and start a new one. And complementary question to this one, not in the app. How many of you was satisfied with the results of rewrite? And consider the rewrite as success. Please raise the hand. It was PPC talk. Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe a bad question at all. Because this is just like a common design process.
It's
You,
not
you have
common.
some assumptions, you try to do something, you test the result, and then you start again.
Maybe wrongly asked questions. I'm talking about application which has some history. It's not POC, and it's not evolutionary architecture when you through the continuous refactoring change the application. I am talking about that you have some application, the development process is crap, and the company decides, let's stop development of this application and let's start a greenfield app and change it completely.
I've been to one company who's done this with three sort of, how to say, self-contained systems. It's like an industry vertical, and they've replaced these systems after 5, 6, 7 years. They've completely rewritten them because they've learned tons of stuff by doing the first ones, and then they've rewritten them. And I've been on a project where the company was reluctant, and we were sitting on a like 10, 15-year-old code base, and the developers were spending 90% of the time trying to fix stuff in this 15-year-old architecture. And I was like screaming all day, sitting in there and saying, well guys, throw it away, do it all over, start from scratch, and you'd be done in no time.
It's the great command, and start thinking how we get there. How it's possible that you put a bunch of talented developers in one place and they end up with application which is unable to use or improve or change. So how is possible? Next question will be with some code examples, and it will be about show me your logger, and I will tell you how crappy your application is. So
Okay.
there is first variant. Your logging or telemetry process in your application is just console log. It will be possibility one. Another one is that you have some logger implementation in your application, and you are directly importing it in all your components or your code. And third one will be that there is some indirection for using the logger. I will not talk about why I put it there, it will be later. And you can switch back to the poll and let's see the results.
It's just for front end, right?
It doesn't matter. My question, my point is related to architecture, not to the front end directly, but originally it was intended for front end because the examples was okay. There is 7 times just console. We don't use telemetry in your application. You don't need data for debugging productions environment or something like this.
To be fair, like for example, if you use Sentry, you can use the console as a like
Okay.
API for.
Sentry is the second one. I will push them together in this case. So we have 10 cases which are basically direct use of some third-party library. 5 cases, just half of them, which use some indirection. And how many of you know Solid?
Solid, you mean the acronym?
Principles?
Yeah, Solid principles. And how many of you knows the D from the Solid? Yeah, dependency inversion. In those two cases, you are not able to customize your logger for just part of your application. You are tied to some implementation, and it has some implication, for example, for testing. If you have, for example, Sentry logger, you need to somehow mock the Sentry responses or something like this. It's basically it's something we know about Solid 30 years, and we don't use it. Why? My question is, what is the other solutions? I'm just curious. Can you tell us how to implement logger in different way?
So I was in that category. So we use the APM, like application performance monitoring from Elastic. And
Yeah, but
we don't
you
log
basically
much.
you have some you have client in the front application. You directly use the client to send the logs data.
We don't send logs from frontend.
Okay.
Like we use this only for the performance, and otherwise we have a lot of tests for the frontend components. So basically, we have only like the biggest issues from the APM, like the crashing and such.
Yeah, but the problem. Think about the logger that is the umbrella infrastructure piece of your application. If you are done using dependency inversion for logger, you probably don't use dependency inversion for anything else. And your application is tightly coupled with third-party dependencies, and everybody knows what means be tightly coupled with third-party dependencies, because any change affect all your code, and you don't have easy way how to face this situation. Okay, next question. This is just example about import help. Let's make those 3, 6, 8 imports as gold standard, that is maximum which is allowed. And the question is, do you face components that has more imports than 8 in your code base, and how often? If you know, it's
Like 50.
and how many components you have in your project? 16? 55?
25.
And my question is, why do you think I am asking about this import problem? Because this is a good indicator of one pattern. And the pattern is
Reusable components. Like
it's connected, but basically it means you don't have any abstractions. All your code is imperative, and you force your developers to write each implementation of each problem again, and again. It's pretty good indicator that you are completely missing abstraction in your application. So if you don't agree, please.
Sorry, so like if you have a lot of imports, it means you are not abstracting, or if you have few imports, it means you are not abstracting?
If you have a lot of imports, you don't abstracting, because the following code means that you are using each import with, and you are compose your business logic by reusing those imports. But if you are doing it often, it means that you don't have some business logic wrapper, and your business logic is around all your code base instead to be somewhere localized and reused when you need it.
So when you mean import, you mean a component? So what you
Or module.
Anything.
Anything. Module is better definition than component.
But isn't that the symptom of composition?
Yeah, but anyway, if you, for example, if you do functional composition, you are composing simple things to bigger piece, and then bigger piece to the even bigger piece, and you don't do this on the one place. You have several levels or layers of composition, and you are preparing functions which are relevant to your domain or to your feature. And you are not using the language or your application primitives to compose it on one place each time. And next question is related to this. What paradigm you are using in your projects? And I kindly remind you that writing classes is not object-oriented programming, and writing function is not functional programming. I will be partially interested in those two columns. Because they are completely in the opposite of the previous answers. So I return the slides slightly back then. So we are writing imperative code according to this, and according to those results, we use OOP or functional programming, which should prevent us from doing it so often. So I don't have explanation for it. Maybe questions. My interest is in functional programming, so I will ask those 9 people, what does it mean that you are using functional programming? What patterns from functional programming you are using in your applications?
Sorry.
Okay.
Point-free programming, avoiding side effects, blurring, and that kind of stuff. And for OOP, it depends on which view
Yeah,
you have.
those two paradigms are
Yeah.
pretty same, because
Yeah.
original OOP is avoiding side effects, avoiding mutable states, and the same applies for functional programming. To be honest, I saw such code base just once in my career. And this is why I am surprised by this result, because anytime I try to implement functional programming, even simple functional programming paradigms in companies I work, it was a big problem. Functional programming is hard. It looks simple. You just have functions, and you somehow compose them, and it's easy, and maybe someone else in future. No, it's hard. It takes time to be professional in functional programming. It takes time to learn it. So it's not easy to use it in your projects. Maybe this one.
So I want to say reactive programming. I'm not sure in which
Which one?
reactive programming.
Yeah, I excluded it from questions because this is one, but I rarely saw it in front-end application. Are you using PragueJS or something different?
I'm using PragueJS in both browser and some backend in the project.
And last question of my talk, which bigger architectural concept are you using for development of your applications? I will comment it later because it's not visible. My question is, when I see the data-driven design, do we have some Clojure developers here? Or we are talking still about JavaScript? Okay, it seems that it's a mix of approach, domain-driven design and data-driven design winners. I suspect that maybe we are using data-driven, domain-driven design somehow, but basically, I will ask another question which I don't have in this talk. How many of you knows algebraic data types?
This is which data his presentation was.
Okay, two of you. The same question, different language. How many of you knows union types? Discriminative union types in TypeScript. It's the same questions. Yeah, slightly more hands. You cannot do domain-driven design without those types. Just if you don't understand me, domain-driven design you means that you are prepare your interface upfront. You resolve during the preparation of your features some communication problems about your between your components or systems. And it means that you have clearly defined API for your feature. And you are not able to define such APIs without using some advanced. If I am talking about TypeScript, you are not able to do it without using some advanced type constructions, which are discriminated unions / algebraic data types. They are it's different terms for the same thing. Almost.
I don't think so.
How
It's
do
more,
you?
I think that the
How do you
basis
represent?
of domain-driven design is that you establish some ubiquitous language with your customer,
Yeah.
and then domain experts, and then you build your software based on this.
Okay.
So what you are talking about is just how expressive is your language in designing the domain using these language primitives. The basis is that we all know what we are talking about, and we have strict communication framework.
It applies to non-type language as well. For example, how do you describe the communication for the fetch? Give me clear descriptions of the fetch API.
Well, it depends if you think about fetch API as part of your domain. Like my domain is pricing, and there is no fetch in pricing.
You need ask backend somehow.
Yeah, but it's just implementation detail.
And this process has several stages. How do you describe those states to be sure that everybody follows those states? Enum, yeah, but enum is not enough for those complex states, because basically you have idle state, loading, error state, and success state. So, and error state and success state has some payload, so, and you are not able to describe it with enum. And you are not able, you eventually are able to make your state clear with enum, but you have to somehow combine to be safe that if you have this enum value that you have result, success result, that you have this payload, and it's not possible with simply enum. And I don't know how many of you knows Scott Vashin. I don't know if I don't. Yeah, and he wrote a great book about the main driver design main function, and even the book is focused on F#. The first half of the book is just about the process of modeling domain, and basically it's about how to establish the process of domain modeling and how to represent the results of this modeling via types. So I recommend it to you. This one is a surprise for me, data-driven design, because JavaScript is terrible in this approach. May I ask who is responsible for those results, and to try to explain it to us?
Apparently no one.
Yeah. Okay, we will discuss it.
How about TypeScript actually?
TypeScript doesn't matter. If you know, for example, PragueJS, this is language designed to perform domain-driven design, and it works well in this language. I don't imagine how to do it in TypeScript without another helpers. Okay, clearly, I expect much worse results from this survey. So great. But I think we have problem, and the problem is that many of front-end developers lack knowledge about architecture or architecture concepts or programming paradigms. It has some reasons, but maybe another question just to the audience. I use, for example, hexagonal architecture term in one question. How many of you know this term? Okay, let's see short history about software architecture. And it's terrible. For example, Onion architecture, hexagonal architecture is 2 decades old concept. Layering, I will explain that it's just basic concept we often use, that we have some data fetching components or modules, UI components, and business logic components. According to the results, we don't use even layering data. And there are, especially in the last 30 years, those two concepts are pretty interesting, and we don't use them. Why? Any idea? We maybe somehow use BDD, but I have doubts about it.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What?
Can you repeat the question?
Why we are ignoring the history of software development? Why we don't use those approach in the front-end development?
Because like I think they are difficult and you need like years of experience working with different bases to understand how usable they are.
Great. And this is exactly the answer I was looking for. Thank you, Tom. It basically means we don't have senior front-end developers which will works as mentor for us to teach us. We don't have developers which has experience and practice in those concepts. We don't have developers which can decide which concept is for this project the best one. We don't have front-end, senior front-end developers. Do you agree?
You could make up a different timeline of the JavaScript frameworks. I'm a backend guy, and we were joking about Java's front-end or JavaScript framework of the
I have
moment.
here, and why we get there. So this is. I think that the reason is that from the start, I remember the beginning of the front-end or web applications in Czech Republic. From start, it was some funny projects. You just wrote some HTML, then you add some CSS, then you add some jQuery, and that was all. You have fancy new website. But I remember a time when JavaScript wasn't considered as real language. And it's, I think the issue where it starts, the real developers just jump into strain, and we lost the context with history, because mainly young and inexperienced developers jump into web development. And anything what happened in the past 15 years was unknown for us, and we do our best, and we did many times wrong, sometimes good, but that was it. And in the past decade, there is explosion of JavaScript frameworks, libraries, utilities, whatever image, CSS frameworks. And it puts our senior developers big overload, because you have to you need to be up to date with the recent technologies. It means that you need some knowledge about what those technologies are doing, if I can use them or no. And it consumes our capacities, and we are not able to focus on something else more important. This is my explanation. Maybe you have another thought?
Yeah. So, can you go back to the previous slides?
This one?
Yeah, it's more philosophical question. Do you think it would be where we are without the previous stages? I mean, it's a linear evolution, or you mean there are some dead ends? I mean, you know what I mean? Would be where we are now without the 80s, for example. If 80s didn't happen, do you think we were where we are now?
Yeah, because we don't know what's happened in 80s.
So whatever didn't have to happen, right?
Yeah, and this is basically state of
So it's a waste of
front-end.
time?
Yeah.
It wasn't a wasted time, or?
No, it wasn't wasted time. It's our ignorance, my ignorance, whatever.
We basically. But you are talking about the front-end developer.
Yeah,
And
it's my expertise. I will not talk about backend or another kinds of development. From my perspective, we lost 15 years of programming development history just to do front-end development. And it will take us huge effort to change it. Even I don't know if we change it. So this is questions. Yeah.
I've done a similar analysis, not as detailed, but if you look at the development or the evolution of test-driven development, when did the first books about TDD come out? And how long did it take me, again from the back-end perspective, how long did it take the companies to implement test-driven development or even have some test coverage and look for test coverage in the development? That's also like 15 years. Similar stuff applies to if you look at Toyota production system, which is Kanban and all this stuff. So what we call Kanban is different to their Kanban. But the first Toyota books came out like 1990 or something, when Kanban was actually invented by Toyota, and it got mainstream like 20 years later. So it's like there is a time lag in all of this. And I had a similar lights on moment a couple of months ago when I looked at the PHP framework. And I've done PHP, not my main business, but I had to do, sorry. This PHP framework that I was using at that time, like 12 years ago, was no dependency injection, no nothing, what I was already using in Java for a couple of years. And now, in their two releases later, major releases later, they are now inventing dependency injection in PHP backend frameworks. So
It was 10 years ago as well.
so there is some evolution, and from my perspective, again, the JavaScript side, as you also mentioned, there's lots of young people. There has been tons of iterations, and everybody is reinventing the wheel. And I talked to another guy. We've been deploying on cruise ships. We've been deploying JavaScript nightly builds. And if you think about this, like 1,000 terminals on a cruise ship, and you have nightlies deployed there a couple of years ago, not now. Because of this rapid development style in JavaScript. Whereas we backend guys have Java frameworks that are now like 10 years old, and they are well-rounded and it works. So, sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my question is, what's next? How we can change this?
I have one more note about this. Like, do you think it's just an evolution? Because like the previous slide, like from my point of view, we will go. No, the next one. I mean, we will go through all of these steps again and again and again. But it's not like a cycle, but it's a spiral. You know, we are doing procedural programming in some sense, but we build a tooling around it, so it's bearable. And we will go to MVC, OP, and it will.
We will probably not go through the MVC because this pattern is not usable for front-end.
Yeah, I mean, but you know.
Yeah, eventually, yes, but why? Because we already have those patterns. The authors and community around those patterns are trying to propagate them. But from my perspective, from my Twitter bubble, I see that the responses of audience are not so warm. So, and maybe even smart people, I think, people I am considering that they are smart and they doing great job, for example, for TypeScript. When they face to the some architectural patterns, then stop and start complain about them why we should do this complicated things. Yeah, making things simple doesn't mean that it's easy. It needs practice, needs experience, and without it, we are not able to do it effectively. For example, last year I started to explore the hexagonal architecture. The concept itself is pretty simple. My testing application is rewritten for maybe 50 times, because the first problem when you start to explore the architecture, you over-engineer, and then you learn how to find the right balance between abstractions and imperative codes. So it needs practice, and without it, it's useless. And my question is, do you have any other ideas how to change the state of the front end?
Like 15 years ago, I was on the university and we learned only. I end up on the MVP pattern basically, and none of those new we learn. And what I like, especially now, is, for example, like in the developers, they copy paste all the time from what the other does. And what I like on React, the latest, greatest, there is like the hooks everywhere, which is like the concept from the functional programming. No, at least I feel it's more than it. So you just copy what you see, and if you put there in the frameworks, the basics, what we encourage them, it's like also in the PHP, like a lot of frameworks use the dependency injections by default, and you just like do what they told you. So the basic would be like good for you, and then you either learn the concepts or you just like don't
Yeah, I
get
think
much.
that college system in our republic is part of the problem. I check websites of three major colleges which are providing some computer science degree, and architecture in best case are 2 courses during all your education, so and they are not mandatory. So
I would also put regexis as a mandatory, but
Can we go back to the timeline, the frameworks? I think that the one thing you was talking about why there is no architecture in JavaScript mainly was decided when the Angular was going slightly down and the React was going slightly up, and React won the war of the frameworks. And it was for me it was very hard to believe that the JavaScript programmers, they love React and they hated the Angular, the one that I loved because I came from Java, and it looked like the Spring MVC thing that we did in Java.
yeah, it may be true, because Angular itself provides us with some concept how to write applications, and we may be in better situation with Angular. But from my perspective, Angular made big mistake with version 1.5. It was two-way data binding. If you don't do this thing, it was something terrible. You can easily connect your store with your UI, and the performance implication was terrible.
Because because you cannot ignore the DOM, and you cannot ignore the language itself, and Angular was like it was written for a different language, which looked like Java. That's the JavaScript, but the JavaScript is a totally different language that.
Yeah,
Java.
for example, karaoke. Do you have still some Ember remains in PriceFX?
Yeah.
And the Ember from those times was object-oriented framework with great concepts.
It was highly influenced by Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
So it was MEC and it was designed as object-oriented, like object-oriented primitives in the JavaScript, you know. So you were just like playing game that you are doing object-oriented programming, and then the JavaScript suddenly appeared and everything was different than you expected.
Okay, I think it's time to bring the discussion to the beer then. And I enjoy your
Let me
comments
just moderate a little bit.
replies. Thank
We
you.
are overlapping our time frame, so I'm completely fine continuing, but if you feel like we are already in the pub, we should probably just quickly answer your question regarding what's the future. So how many of you thinks that the future is that we will write code basically by instructing in native language and some copilot or something will program it for us? No one?
I think this is the future, and I think maybe it is connected with this. Like the machine time is cheaper and cheaper, and you can with these higher concepts you can do really easily whatever you like. So if you do the architecture bad way, you can generate it next week in different style, no problem.
Maybe someday, but large language models are not capable to create architecture. It's out of
Not
the
yet.
scope. They will never be to do it because they are just predicting next word.
Never say never.
Another AI model maybe, and we don't have them yet.
But,
Thank you.
But it's cheap. Like the brute force way is cheaper and cheaper. So you don't pay the price for bad decisions because they are easy to change because you just use another brute force again.
Maybe I'll see it will be great if we end up with those concepts. We will see. It's future.
Maybe I would add one another slide with a book, the JavaScript, the good parts.
Oh,
Because maybe the history is in the compilation, because TypeScript has a compilation. So we already do compilation when we do frontend, which was maybe 10 years before it wasn't. So
let's invite Ricky for the PragueJS talk. They will give us JavaScript good parts live.
So maybe we can use the language which has the good parts of the JavaScript, but it's not the JavaScript.
I know your objection.
And Node.js?
No, there are already languages that are better than TypeScript and compiles to JavaScript, and their evolution is really small. Beer.
Anyone want to think about this or no? If not, is that your last slide, Pavel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much.